Hey everyone, just before I start today's video, I want to thank you all for helping Wrestling Bios reach the 100,000 subscriber mark. It's truly something I never thought would happen, and it's really awesome that you guys have decided to stick around and you've continued to watch and support the channel. Thanks again to all of you for making the channel a success. Now sit back and enjoy the next episode in my Undertaker career series as we look at the dead man in 1996. So our previous video ended at 1995. The Undertaker was wearing his Phantom of the Opera style mask at the time, and he was also due a WWF title shot. Bret the Hitman Hart had won the championship from Big Daddy Cool Diesel at the 1995 Survivor Series, so the Undertaker would get his opportunity at the 1996 Royal Rumble. Diesel, on the other hand, would have to enter the Royal Rumble to try and earn a WWF Championship rematch. HBK Shawn Michaels eliminated Diesel to win the Royal Rumble match, and afterwards Diesel wasn't too happy, but still he celebrated with Shawn after the match. After the Royal Rumble match, we had Bret Hart versus The Undertaker for the WWF Championship. While I feel their Summerslam 1997 encounter was better, this Taker vs Bret match was also pretty good. However, the ending just didn't feel decisive. I will say though that there was definitely an unpredictable feeling about this match, seeing as Undertaker had been pretty dominant going into 1996. As Taker was making his way to the ring, Diesel stood at the entranceway to stop the dead man in his tracks. Diesel felt annoyed about not winning the Royal Rumble and missing out on an opportunity to face the champion at Mania, and so he traded blows with The Undertaker before the championship match got underway. Anyway, the match began. It was quite good and interesting to see a babyface versus babyface main event, but again, SummerSlam 1997 is your match if you want to see Bret versus Taker. Notable here though is that during this match, Bret Hart removed The Undertaker's mask, and this would be the last time we would see the mask on the dead man. Undertaker had the match won after nailing Bret with a tombstone, but Diesel came back and pulled the ref out of the ring during the 3 count. The ref disqualified Bret. Undertaker wins the match, but not the WWF Championship. Diesel flipped The Undertaker off and walked back up the entranceway, so in short, The Undertaker was robbed at the 1996 Royal Rumble. Immediately following the Royal Rumble, Gorilla Monsoon announced that Diesel would get his WWF Championship rematch from the Survivor Series at the next In Your House pay-per-view, so it seemed like Diesel was getting rewarded here for interfering in Taker's match. Diesel had an interview afterwards where he said he got involved in The Undertaker's match just to prove that he was number one, and he also told Taker that he wasn't afraid of the dark. Before getting to In Your House in the cage match between Bret Hart and Diesel, Bret and The Undertaker had a WWF Championship rematch on Raw. Diesel was at the commentary desk for this match, and the match itself was actually really good. The referee got took out when Taker went for a tombstone, and Diesel used this opportunity to take out both Bret and The Undertaker. So again, we had another good match with an indecisive finish. So on to In Your House in February of 1996, and Bret defended his title against Diesel in the cage. Notable about this match here is that the crowd was also cheering for Diesel. Plenty of times there were loud Diesel chants in the audience, even though he was booked as a strong heel here, feuding with both Bret Hart and The Undertaker. Anyway, Diesel had the match won. He was about to exit the cage door, but Undertaker appeared from under the ring and he grabbed Diesel, which allowed Bret to escape the cage and win the match. When Diesel and Taker re-emerged from under the ring, Big Daddy Cool quickly ran away and the show went off the air. The following night on Raw, Undertaker had a match with Tatanka. During the match, Diesel came out holding an axe and he grabbed a cameraman to go backstage. After the commercial break, we saw Diesel destroying the Undertaker's casket while Taker continued to work against Tatanka in the ring. Taker got the win and he was able to see Diesel destroying the casket on the big screen. The dead man went backstage, but Diesel had already left. All that remained were the broken pieces of the casket. Paul Bearer warned Diesel that he would pay for his actions. The following week on Raw, The Undertaker vs Diesel was officially announced for WrestleMania XII. Diesel also had a match on this night against Bob Holly, and during the showdown, Diesel would continually look over his shoulder. The paranoia of The Undertaker showing up seemed to be getting at Big Daddy Cool. Diesel won the match and seemed pleased that Taker didn't show up, so he made his way back up the entranceway. Just then, the lights went out and Undertaker appeared in the ring. Diesel turned around to go after Taker, but the lights went out again and Taker had vanished. Undertaker appeared on the big screen, telling Diesel that if he wants to play mind games, then Big Daddy Cool will play mind games with the Master. Looking back now, I thought this was really well done and added a nice touch to the story. The Undertaker's mission was to make Big Daddy Cool lose his cool. The March 18th edition of Raw then, and it didn't take long for Diesel to lose his cool. Diesel was booked into a match with Barry Horowitz. Diesel was still paranoid, checking under the ring before starting the match and all that stuff. But early into the match, Paul Bearer came to ringside with a casket. Diesel naturally thought that The Undertaker was in the casket, but what he would find was maybe even more disturbing than the dead man himself. After beating Barry Horowitz with a punch to the face, and no, I'm not making that up, Diesel approached the casket. Diesel opened the casket and he saw himself. One of the most creepy things the WWF have ever done here. It was really, really good. And Diesel looked totally freaked out afterwards. His reaction was believable. He didn't know what to do. So how was this chilling stunt pulled off? Camera work and editing is your answer. The shot of Diesel in the casket was pre-recorded, so that is the real Kevin Nash you see in the casket. The show quickly cut to this pre-recorded spot for a brief second, then went back to the arena to capture Diesel's reaction. What you see here is a mannequin dummy, and what you see here during the close-up is Kevin Nash himself. Many people said it was actually Glenn Jacobs in the casket during the shots right here, but Bruce Pritchard revealed on his podcast that it was actually a dummy. Who knows, it seems weird that we never get to see the dummy any other time, like in candid photos or backstage photos and things like that, but I prefer to take a producer's word on things like this if we have no other definitive explanation. All in all, it was an excellent piece of work here and it was definitely freaky. One of the better Undertaker supernatural moments in WWF history and one that doesn't get brought up all too often. The following week, the final Raw before WrestleMania, Paul Bearer and The Undertaker had an in-ring interview with Vince McMahon. Paul Bearer explained that this all started because Diesel cost Undertaker the championship back at the Royal Rumble. Undertaker said that after WrestleMania, all that will remain is the carcass of Big Daddy Cool. Undertaker said that he won't just beat Diesel at Mania, but he will also take his soul. WrestleMania 12 then, and I honestly feel that Diesel vs The Undertaker is quite underrated. For two big guys, it's a pretty physical match that hits nearly 17 minutes. Diesel was able to hit 2 jackknife powerbombs on The Undertaker, but it wasn't enough, and The Undertaker left WrestleMania 12 with a victory, 5-0 at WrestleMania. Up to this point, this was The Undertaker's best WrestleMania match, I feel, and even though Kevin Nash had already given his notice, he didn't get lazy here, and maybe this was out of respect for his opponent. Both he and Undertaker had a good showing here. There's also a lot of speculation in regards to the outcome of this match being different had Diesel not gave his notice. Kevin Nash even said recently that there's a possibility he would have ended the streak had things been differently, when he said, "If I would have stayed, I wouldn't have dropped the belt to Bret to give to Shawn unless I was guaranteed a win at Mania against Taker. I wouldn't have done it, no. I would have had too many losses in a row. I would have needed a big win right there, so there goes the streak. Mark," in reference to The Undertaker, "wasn't a mark. He would have done it." I'm not saying it would have happened, I'm not saying Vince would have booked it, but I definitely wouldn't have coughed it up without something in regards to the WWF Championship. This match ended the Diesel vs Undertaker feud, and next up for The Undertaker was Mankind, kicking off a feud that would last years and become revered in the wrestling world. Vignettes had been airing for weeks, signalling that Mankind was on his way to the WWF, and the night after WrestleMania, Mankind showed up and destroyed Bob Holly. Undertaker main evented this episode of Raw against Justin Hawk Bradshaw, and after Taker delivered the tombstone, Mankind stormed to the ring and led out The Undertaker. Mankind totally decimated the dead man here, with Mick Foley being positioned as a real threat to the legend of The Undertaker. Over the coming weeks, Mankind would continue to interfere in Undertaker's matches, gaining the upper hand each and every time. At the 1996 King of the Ring then, Mankind defeated The Undertaker when Paul Bearer accidentally hit Taker with the urn, allowing Mankind to apply the mandible claw, and Undertaker lost via TKO. Undertaker got an Intercontinental title shot against Goldust at In Your House Beware of Dog, kickstarting a secondary feud here which would run at the same time as Undertaker vs Mankind. At Beware of Dog, Taker and Goldust met in a casket match, and just when Taker was ready to win the match, Mankind appeared from the casket, costing The Undertaker the Intercontinental title. After Beware of Dog, we went to Vancouver for In Your House International Incident, a show that featured an Undertaker vs Goldust rematch. Again in this match, Mankind interfered by emerging from the ring and applying the mandible claw to the Phenom. Mankind came back up, and it seemed like he had lost The Undertaker somewhere underneath the ring, and just then, Taker emerged from the other side of the ring. A brawl broke out between Mankind and Undertaker, leading all the way to the arena boiler room. After the show, Gorilla Monsoon announced that Mankind and Undertaker would face each other in a boiler room brawl at Summerslam 1996. On his way to SummerSlam, Undertaker had a match with Stone Cold Steve Austin on the July 29th episode of Raw. Before Undertaker could get the win against Austin, Mankind came to ringside, causing Undertaker to get counted out, and Stone Cold got the win. Undertaker returned to the ring and informed Mankind that at SummerSlam, the Reaper will enter the Serpent's Lair. The Boiler Room Brawl was an interesting match. The whole thing was pre-recorded, and the WWF hadn't really done many matches of this nature with the exception of maybe the Hollywood Backlot Brawl at WrestleMania XII, where the majority of the showdown takes place backstage and ends in the ring. Back then, these kind of matches were novel, but they were also really cool to watch at home. I mentioned before that the Boiler Room Brawl has been surpassed in the years that followed, but back then, this was some great stuff. Anyway, Taker and Mankind battled around the arena boiler room and beyond, destroying each other with whatever items they could find lying around, with Mick Foley taking some ludicrous bumps in the process. To win the match, a competitor had to leave the boiler room and retrieve the urn from Paul Bearer. When Undertaker got to the ring, the unthinkable happened when Paul Bearer turned on the dead man, siding with Mankind here and allowing Mick Foley to score the win. A good match here for its time. It created a lot of buzz with the actual match itself and with Paul Bearer parting ways with The Undertaker. The end of the match was indeed shocking. Mankind now had possession of the urn, and Paul Bearer had left The Undertaker after all these years. The following night on Raw, it was announced that Mankind had earned himself a WWE Championship match against Shawn Michaels at In Your House Mind Games. During Mankind's in-ring interview on this night, the lights began flickering in the arena, and all of a sudden, the lights went out. A group of druids carried The Undertaker to ringside, laying him down on the floor. Paul Bearer said that The Undertaker was dead, but the Phenom sat up and got to his feet, causing some pyro to go off in the ring as Mankind and Paul Bearer ran away. It was clear that The Undertaker would continue on without the urn and without Paul Bearer. After Shawn Michaels defeated Mankind at In Your House Mind Games in an excellent match, The Undertaker appeared from a coffin at ringside, attacking Mankind as the audience in attendance went totally nuts. The Taker vs Mankind feud would move on to the next chapter at In Your House in October. The main event would be the first ever Buried Alive match, pitting the Dead Man vs Mankind in the first ever match of this kind. No one knew what to expect here, but commentators told us on Raw that a real cemetery would be built in the arena, and the only way to win the match was to bury your opponent alive. This brought a great deal of intrigue to October's In Your House pay-per-view. The weeks leading up to the pay-per-view showed Undertaker digging Mankind's grave in pre-taped vignettes, while Mankind was shown exhibiting fear about possibly being buried alive at In Your House. At the pay-per-view, there was a gravesite set up beside the entranceway, and yes, the loser of the match would indeed get buried alive. More intrigue was added thanks to the WWF in storyline not sanctioning the match, the first time this was ever done in the WWF. This meant, according to Vince McMahon on the headset, that the WWF would not take responsibility for what could happen during the match. Good stuff. Due to interference from the Executioner, better known as Terry Gordy of the Fabulous Freebirds, and other heels of the WWF, Mankind was able to get the win over The Undertaker when the numbers got too much for the Dead Man. This was very reminiscent of the 1994 Royal Rumble when the heels took out The Undertaker in the Casket match, showing here that a great way to defeat the Dead Man is with strength and numbers. After the match, an iconic moment in the history of The Undertaker occurred when his hand rose above the dirt, signalling that The Undertaker wasn't dead just yet. When Taker returned 1 month later at the Survivor Series, he had a brand new look as the evolution of The Undertaker character took another step forward. So at the 1996 Survivor Series, it was announced that Undertaker will return to face Mankind. This time, Paul Bearer would be suspended above the ring in a cage, and if Taker won, he would get his hands on his former manager. Undertaker's entrance was spectacular, coming to the ring from the rafters while spreading his bat wings as he slowly descended into the ring. Taker was now wearing all black leather. He had a fake teardrop tattoo placed below his right eye, and he looked totally different. There's been speculation over why he had this teardrop, with no sources ever being quoted, from losing a close friend to the end of the Paul Bearer relationship being mentioned as reasons, so I'm not even going to get into it. It's never been explained. I just thought it was a nice addition to the new Taker character. Undertaker won this match, and I can remember being shocked seeing the VHS of Survivor Series 1996 as the Sky Sports broadcast here in the UK had cut this match way down to around 2.5 minutes, no joke. I always thought this was a squash match for the longest time until I bought the VHS, and seeing it in all its glory made me question other pay-per-view matches I had watched on Sky Sports in the past. Still, a good match here. Taker didn't get his hands on Paul Bearer though. Instead, the Executioner came to the ring, allowing Paul to make an escape. This set up the Executioner versus The Undertaker at In Your House It's Time in December, a match that The Undertaker won. Just going back to the Survivor Series match briefly, I recently done a Survivor Series 1996 watch-along for the Wrestling Bios channel supporters, and watching this back made me realise how good Paul Bearer was at hamming it up. He was really funny before the match where he refused to get into the cage, and also he was really good in the pre-match promo. Good stuff. The Taker vs Executioner match at In Your House It's Time was billed as an Armageddon rules match. Basically a last man standing match, but you had to get a pinfall or submission before the ref started the 10 count. Old school fans would know these matches were billed previously as Texas Death matches. Mankind attempted to interfere in this match, leading to security coming down and spraying mace in Mankind's eyes. Why this happened, I don't know. It was an ODQ match. Security also put a straitjacket on Mankind, but anyway, after battling around and outside the arena, The Undertaker nailed the tombstone and the Executioner was unable to answer the 10 count after the pinfall. Take away the stuff with security macing Mankind and all that, and you have yourself another underrated and fun match here. So that's it for 1996. Another good year for The Undertaker, with the main bullet points being the Diesel and Mankind feuds, which really did take up the entire year for the dead man. Next up was 1997, a year where a lot went down as The Undertaker continued to evolve as a character going into the Attitude Era. We will look at The Undertaker's 1997 very soon here on the channel.